Talk to us about scarcity trauma. Like, what is it? And can you explain how it impacts somebody through the generations?
Absolutely. So people don't realize that the little things they do could be rooted in scarcity trauma. It's when you have a history of a lack of resources and you may not have realized that, how this impacted you. Maybe you were very little, but your parents still behaved in a way that any day now resources could run out. So you may do things that are illogical, like not wearing things that you just bought, right? They're just hanging out in the closet with the tag on, or holding on to expired food that clutter your life and cause distress. And you're like, why are my cabinets full of all this? Or having a hard time getting rid of clothes that you don't wear them anymore.
Yeah.
So you hold on to these things because on an unconscious, unprocessed level, you're afraid that any minute things will be lost, right? You'll lose it all. So people engage in these behaviors with a scarcity mindset out of trauma of not having resources. And it's not just immigrants. I see it in people whose parents or grandparents, there's generational trauma. So if their grandparents were refugees or survivors of war, or if personally, maybe they had resources, but they went through like a really bad business, period where they went bankrupt or a divorce, and they're afraid of losing it all. So they behave in these irrational ways that are trauma responses. So they hoard. Some people do the opposite. They spend too much. I've seen this a lot where it's like, I'm not accustomed to having abundance, so I'll just spend. So you're like, wait, you have all this money and then you just lost it. Well, I'm not accustomed to having it. So there are all these odd kind of symptoms that don't really impact a person's life in the way they want it to. So they really hurt them and cause distress. And another thing I see is emotional scarcity. So in a lot of these families where they're like just focused on survival, right? There's not a lot of like talking about emotions. Like, what's that? What's
or
emotion?
warmth?
Or
Anybody
warmth?
grew up in a
Right.
very cold family?
So there's emotional scarcity. So you see all these ways that a lack of resources impacts a family, a generation, and it gets passed on. So if you're someone who's like, wait, I have those things, look back at your family. It could have been coming from generations where they didn't have much or they fled war. There was something that led to that mindset. Or it could be something present day like a divorce or, a hard financial period in your life.
So this is a serious example, like is going into Chipotle and saying like, I'm not going to get the guacamole because it's an extra $3, even though you got plenty of money. Is that an example of that?
No, I think that's different because that's not
Just being
necessarily
cheap?
causing you distress. We're talking about things that cause distress to people. So like one thing I'll see is like people hoarding Tupperware. Like they'll have takeout boxes and it's just like, they're never going to use it. And they're cracked and broken. You can't even recycle it. And it's like, well, get rid of it. It's crowding your life. And it's creating this like unwanted stress in your life. Or like I'll ask some of my clients to open their bag in the office and there are like all these receipts that they're never going to return things, but they want to hold on to it. It's like, it's causing chaos and clutter and people don't understand why they do these things. And then it's like, wait, you come from scarcity. So you have these unconscious like fears that you haven't processed. Let's start to challenge it. What's the worst that'll happen if you start decluttering your purse? Let's throw away some of those receipts. Let's start to give some of that clothes to charity. And they actually want to do these things, but they need help. And like exposure therapy, it's a form of cognitive behavioral therapy where you slowly challenge the fears. And so we slowly start to give things away and people feel very, anxious sometimes about it, but they have to understand that these behaviors are rooted in these unwarranted fears due to a history of scarcity.
Yeah.
And if you know where it comes from, then you're going to be like, okay, I can actually challenge this a bit more. I can live for today, right? We talk a lot about happiness and the idea of happiness. People are living for the future, a future that's not promised. So how do you be happier today?
Well, what I love about this topic is I think it's very relatable. And I also, whether you're talking about it on the physical side of things that you're holding on to from this lack of resources, or whether it is an inability to talk about feelings or express warmth and be affectionate with each other because of the scarcity of that in your family, I can see how that pattern gets passed down and passed down and passed down and passed down. And one of the things that I really like about what you're saying and giving it a name is that you realize, oh, this isn't me. This is a pattern from history that I am now reenacting that is not mine to own. It's mine to complete for this family, so I don't pass it on and I don't cause myself the distress. I can think about I come from a long line of farmers, and my grandmother, I would open up her fridge when we would visit in the summer, and it was always really dimly lit. And you want to talk about expired food? I mean, when you have a farm and you're taking care of all these animals and you're growing produce, you do not throw anything away. And so it was literally like a science experiment in that thing. And for a long time, I had a lot of chaos around, like when I had a little dorm fridge, and I couldn't understand why until I worked with a therapist and realized, oh, this is like, I can't throw anything out. It means I'm bad. It means like I'm not a good person. If you're wasteful, if you're this. And then I've now gone in the other direction, which is I barely have anything in my fridge. Those light bulbs are always brand new, so I can see everything in there. And I really relate to what you're talking about. So and I think we're going to get a lot of questions about this. So if you're somebody who is listening to this and they're shaking their head and they're going, I do that. Yeah, I don't wear my nice clothes ever because I think something's going to happen. I'm afraid to go out to dinner because I'm afraid I'm going to lose my money again. I'm afraid to celebrate it's all going to go away. What is one step that somebody can take other than recognizing that this is a very real thing to start to take control of their life again?
And I love that example of the farmers because farmers have such rich history, right? They go through so much and they don't process because the animals depend on them. Mm-hmm. The community depends on them. But their livelihood is so fragile because if they have a bad storm, if it's not a good season, guess what? It's all gone. So that scarcity mindset, that trauma is real.
Yeah. And it's also where the emotional scarcity comes from because there's no dinner together until the chores are done. And when you got 500 head of cattle to take care of and you're worried about the crops and everything else, there's no time for feelings. Pick yourself up, shut the hell up, and let's get going.
And a lot of eating behaviors around scarcity, like if you can remember a family member saying, eat that food off the plate. And you're like, I'm not even hungry, but I'm just going to eat it. Many of us still do it. Like, I can't see food waste.
Yes.
But that can lead to really unhealthy behaviors and unhealthy physiology, right? So we want to think about all these ways that it's impacting us. It's not just being like frugal or cheap. Is it causing distress? Clutter causes distress, especially someone with ADHD, right? If you can't organize your life and you're adding all this chaos, you already have that challenge, right? So being able to free yourself of it because you're able to name it, right? Then you can do something about it. So I want people to approach it in a very systematic way. You don't have to go and purge your entire, home, but start to challenge that thought, that core belief that you're bad because you're wasteful. You're not wasteful. What's the evidence that you're wasteful? Put that thought, you used to be an attorney, put that thought on the stand.
Right.
And really, cross-examine that thought. What's the evidence that you're wasteful? What's the evidence that you're a bad person? It's not there. So slowly challenge it. Slowly take steps towards getting rid of one thing. Give away one thing. Throw away that one expired can. You're not going to eat it, right? Start to see how that feels. And you can do it, but you have to be able to name it first.
I love that. I'd never even heard that term until I knew you were coming on. And I started looking at your social media. I'm like, scarcity, what? That's a thing? And then as I was watching your reels, I'm like, oh my God, that's a thing. And I think the important thing here is because I can now hear my mom's voice in my head going, why does everything need a label these days? And there is a term for it. What is the term for why actually calling out what something is empowers you?
It's called affect labeling.
Affect, like
affect.
that duck, affect, like not like that. It's affect, like AFF.
Yeah,
I'm about to demonstrate my lack of spelling skills, everybody. AFFECT, affect labeling. This is not about diagnosing anything or anyone. It's about bringing the issues that are bothering you in your life, from the back of your subconscious mind out into the world and looking at it separately from yourself so that you can see it as a problem. Is this help you? Is that why this is so powerful to go, oh, that behavior right there doesn't mean you're screwed up. That's just a scarcity trauma, dude. That's like from your family history. You guys have been doing that in your family for generations, and you get to choose whether you want to keep doing that. What exactly is high functioning?
People who are taking care of their families, they're meeting work deadlines. They're the ones that everyone says, oh my gosh, you're doing a great job. You're the rock of the family. You can't stop because people depend on you. You're meeting deadlines, you're collecting accolades, but you're just not really feeling a sense of joy. So we push through it.